Russia has crossed over into the war. We had Lavrov saying it is World War III this morning. We're seeing an escalation in the risks across the globe with oil and gas and fertilizer and helium and so on, you name it. And very interestingly enough, there's something that's happening in Ghana. Ghana has deepened its military cooperation with the EU and the United States, and Ghana has signed an agreement with the EU and the United States. Very interesting, the agreement, because it is coming at a time when the Sahel and when Burkina Faso in particular and the Sahel have driven out Europe, or the European Union, if you will, out of that segment, that region of Africa, the Sahel. And so here comes Ghana. So we're feeling conflicted about Ghana. We're going to have the conversation. AFRICOM is already on the continent of Africa. This we know. What's happening in Ghana now is that this is related to AFRICOM, but it's not entirely AFRICOM. It's a whole new agreement. It is a forward operating platform. They say that it is without the political cost of hosting a formal base. But I know we're moving away from the formal bases. Remember, I think it was June last year, we told you what was about to unfold with Detachment 201. Look up Detachment 201. I'm not going to go over it again. It's very important for us to remind ourselves that Detachment 201 was not a fluke. And outside of that, it's also important for us to remind ourselves that the ongoing war in the Western Asia and the rest of the world that's happening right now is not a fluke. The ongoing war is planned. The chaos is planned. It is order out of chaos. Detachment 201 was last year, June last year. This was leading to wherever we are now. But it just one, as I don't want to go all the way back to, COVID and to go through that again to say the stages that we're in. But one of the final stages that we saw leading before World War III, because we are in World War III right now. I know that they're saying that it's not. But as I have said many times in this space, World War III is not going to be announced. You'll probably hear different people talking about it from time to time, but it's not going to be announced. It is also an algorithmic war, It is beyond a Cold War. It's moving from one world order to the new world order. If there was ever an announcement of World War III, it would have been at the World Economic Forum in Davos a few months ago. And the announcement would have come from three people. Make that four. From four people. The main announcement would have come from Mark Carney. He said the rules-based order has ruptured. This is not the first time the rules-based order, so-called rules-based order, is rupturing, The League of Nations, leading into World War II, was a rupture. And we can go back to World War I, but we don't need to go back so far right now. And so here we are again, we're seeing all the agencies relating to, say, the United Nations. We're seeing all of those agencies rupturing. The United Nations is laying off people left, right, and center across the world. I don't know what's happening in Jamaica. It is for news to find out. So I'm going to say to newsrooms across Jamaica, pay some attention. Find out how many persons have been laid off within the United Nations or from the United Nations within the last 6 months. I know that in North Africa, majority of the consultants have already lost their jobs. Yeah. The United Nations is one of the first and major casualties of the collapse and the rupturing of the rules-based order. The United Nations is without teeth. The United Nations is a toothless bird. I wouldn't even say dog or bear, any bigger animal, because the United Nations is worth nothing. And we're going to have to face it. And the reason why we have to face it and stop fooling ourselves is that we saw Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu is, according to the International Criminal Court, a war criminal. But he's been to the United States 7 or 8 times in recent times with that designation. And he's all over the place. India. Modi just went to see him. And let's not go into that. So, Lebanon is now being decimated by Israel. Haiti is being pummeled by drones. Children being killed, sanctioned by the United States. Cuba is under a blockade, a chokehold, a genocidal chokehold. The United Nations isn't worth its name. Never really did, but more so now. So we're seeing the end of the United Nations. So that announcement, the announcement of World War III, if you wanted, and the point I'm making is that World War III will not be announced. But if you wanted to say, all right, so it was announced at some point, yeah. And it's not today, because we just heard Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia, just this morning, announcing that we are now in World War III. Lavrov made that announcement this morning. But Lavrov is not the first to announce it. Marconi is not the first to announce it. But if you wanted a material manifestation point of an announcement of World War III, it was Marconi's speech. And the 4 speeches happened at Davos. Marconi, Larry Fink, and listen, we have a black swan moment, and it's connected to Black Rock. So go and look up what black swan means, because we're going to come back and talk about it another time. So black swan in a nutshell is a black swan event in a nutshell is something is an unknown that you're not able to figure out until it has happened. And then you can look in hindsight and say, but we should have known, but we didn't know. So it's an unknown, but we'll see it in time. I think it's connected to Black Rock. And so that if you go back and listen to Larry Fink's speech, if you go back and listen to Marconi's speech, if you listen to Donald Trump's speech, and if you listen to Elon Musk's interview and speech, he talks about calcification of a period if it doesn't change, or human beings, because we're moving into technocracy and transhumanism. That's a next order. And I'm saying this not because I'm welcoming any of it. The idea is, do we know what time of day it is? Do we know where we are? Do we know what's happening? Do we know what the solutions are? Ghana has taken a decision for us in Jamaica and for us in the Caribbean. It is unity among Caribbean countries. It is securing our water sources. It is farming. It is agriculture. It is protecting our freshwater sources, our farmland, our farm food. It is survival, all right? And so Jamaica it has taken a preemptive or operating in a preemptive, obedient way. Preemptive obedience is what we see being practiced in Jamaica. Ghana is doing something totally different, but what Ghana is doing is what they're saying. They've signed an agreement with the European Union, and they've signed an agreement with the United States. What this is going to do for the region, we can only imagine. We have no idea. And one of the things I want to do when I come back from this break is to kind of look at what are some of the possibly, because there are many downsides for Ghana, many downsides, for the continent of Africa. So we're going to come back and talk about that in a moment. All right. So what Ghana is doing, we're seeing Ghana operating in a buffer state. It's a buffer state strategy against the Sahel. And I think both the European Union and the United States have found another way to get into Africa. Ghana is just next door to Benin, I've traveled from Ghana to Benin, and Ghana, Togo, Benin by car. I've made that trip. I've done that. It's not, the borders are artificial, created in 1884 by these very same people that Ghana has gone off to sign agreement with. By the way, for me, I love Ghana, but this is a betrayal on the part of Ghana, and I'm saying this, because I think this deserves some plain speaking. And in the words of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, let us speak plainly. So, looking again at the agreements, the US and EU agreements between US and Ghana, EU and Ghana, they center on access, interoperability, intelligence sharing, joint training, and repositioning of equipment. They say they do not have the label of a base, the whole AFRICOM situation, so there's no on-demand military access corridors. But the American Army is in Ghana training Ghanaians. This is interesting. As I said before, this is a risk to the Sahel. For neighbors like Burkina Faso, Ghana can be perceived as a staging ground for external interventions, even although we're seeing Ghana right now claiming neutrality, and Ghana is trying to balance this, but they find themselves in an interesting situation. And I think that goes right back to people weaker countries in terms of their military and in terms of their economy are not sure what to do. So even while I'm seeing it as a betrayal, I'm still sympathetic to Ghana because I understand that they find themselves in a position of not being sure what to do. But when you're not sure what to do, unite with your neighbor. So Ghana has inadvertently or deliberately become a frontline state, and they haven't really declared it. The agreements are explicitly tied to the Sahel spillover threats, and they're talking about Ghana being a security buffer. But what this does is that it imports the JNIM and the conflicts out of the Sahel, if you will, into Ghana. And my thinking is that Ghana has always been one of the most secure, one of the safest countries in West Africa. But there are some serious risks to these agreements that Ghana has signed. Outside of the military bases that, we're talking about, we have JNIM operating in Burkina Faso in the Sahel. And if Ghana becomes... JNIM is an interesting thing because JNIM, like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, were created by the United States and the European Union. These are not isolated so-called terrorist groups, right? They were created by the EU and by the United States. And how do you know that? You know that because they bombed Syria into nothing. They divided Syria along ethnic lines, and they have installed in Syria, the head of the Syrian government is one of the top generals of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. He has been photographed, holding the heads of Western people that he has beheaded. You remember those photographs that came out during the Iraq War? But now he's a president of Syria. He's one of theirs. He's their man. So that this is an interesting situation that's developing in Ghana. Ghana risks being seen not as a neutral neighbor, but as a Western aligned intelligence outpost. And this is what Ghana is becoming. It is sad, but this is the situation, because Ghana, for me, I would have thought that, the obvious thing to do on the continent of Africa now, as it is obvious in the Caribbean, is for people to come together, for regions to come together. But no, people are taking sides with Europe and with the United States. And this is not something that I want to spend a lot of time just berating, but Ghana is making a terrible mistake. And I know that they've just gone to the United Nations begging for the same oppressors and the same enslavers to tell us that what they did to us was the gravest crime against humanity. I know that I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I'm not celebrating it, We know it's a gravest crime against humanity. We're not asking you. I know that it is not a popular opinion, right? I know that it is, we celebrate the small gains, and that we should. But you're celebrating that, and you're calling for that. But one of the gravest crimes against humanity is happening now in Sudan, is happening now in Congo. Do you understand? Do you get the point I'm making? Not only that, I say that another grave crime, well, not crime, but another grave move is Ghana signing this agreement with not just the United States, but with the European Union. What about regional cooperation? We thought they had that, at least. So we're seeing a fracturing of regional cooperation. And I'll tell you something else too. It's another way for France and Germany and all of them, including the United States, to get back into Africa, because the Sahel kicked them out. That's basically what it is. But also, just as important is that it has become a geopolitical fault line. The Cold War has always been fought on the continent of Africa. And now we see it again, because we have the agreements embedded into a US-EU security agreement. And we see the Sahel increasingly aligning with Russia and China. So the downside for Ghana is that it has become, or it is becoming, a geopolitical fault line. And it's going to be pressured to choose sides in a contest very soon, because we are in World War III. Lavrov this morning actually, or last night our time, announced that we're in World War III. Cheney did tell us before that. So what with AFRICOM, CENTCOM, SOUTHCOM, and all of the other coms, we find ourselves deeply embedded inside of their Cold War. And it is a contest for Africa's minerals, Africa's land, and it is a betrayal of Africa by Ghana. And I don't think that we should allow what happened at the United States, at the United Nations, to overshadow this development coming out of Ghana. I don't know if it's too late for Ghana to reconsider. They've already signed off. But now we find on the flank of the Sahel a shadow war government, where operations may be coordinated from Ghana without transparency, and where we can see that ambiguity escalating into tensions in the region. Can you imagine how Burkina Faso is suspicious of this thing? It has to be. The bombing of Nigeria is critical to this. I'm not quite sure what Nigeria, well, we know what Tinubu, what's his name, is up to in Nigeria. I mean, he was just meeting, interesting thing, Ghana is at the United Nations begging the enslavers to, or leading the process in which we are all begging the enslavers to say this is the gravest crime against humanity, the transatlantic trade in African people. And we have, just around the very same time, the president of Nigeria meeting with the head, the representative of that very same system that enslaved us, without mentioning that. Nigeria's president is in Britain, in the United Kingdom, meeting with Charles, and they roll out the red carpet, and they had the biggest meetings, the biggest banquets. Just like we had a name for them back in the day. I can't remember the name that we have for them, but it's a Samphire business. Ghana is playing a 3-card game. The game where the people have the 2 cups and them kind of spin it. Wait, name Peter. That game where you have where people, you see it sometimes on the roadside, and they have a table and they have all these like dice and stuff, and they kind of shuffle them, and then they put a cup over it, and then you have to point and which cup the money is or whatever is under that, and it's never there. That's a game Ghana is playing. I think it's called a 3-card game, I don't know. But Ghana is playing that game. And Ghana is also, it's smoke and mirrors. So we're out here talking about Ghana leading this process at the United Nations. Okay, fine, well done. We celebrate the little gains. I think we should celebrate the little gains. Get them to say it was a gravest crime. But they didn't say it was a gravest crime. Look at the 52 that abstained. The European Union abstained. The enslavers abstained, or they voted against it. They didn't say it was the gravest crime against humanity. I think that we have to do some critical analysis and deep thinking when we are talking about these kinds of issues. Because to abstain means no. I'd rather not say. And then we have Israel, the United States, and Argentina. No surprises there for Argentina voting no. But they didn't, if I was writing that story, I would say that majority of the countries that voted in favor of the proposal, which is to say slavery was the greatest crime against humanity, were never involved in slavery. They didn't enslave anyone, or at least not us. And that at the United Nations, the enslavers either did not vote, well, for the most part, did not vote. That's basically what it is. And here we have Ghana in bed with the United States and the European Union. We thought that we had gone past that. And we thought that Burkina Faso and the Sahel had set the example that all of us could follow. I'm going to say it again. If you're against Ibrahim Traoré, you are fundamentally against me. All right. Thank you so much. We could say so much more, but we're going to leave it for.
I'm good. I'm all right. Thanks.
All right. I'm so happy to welcome you in the space, because you've been a supporter of the program, African-centered as always, and from time to time we've had conversation, but I'm very happy that for the first time you've made it to the space. And Yannick, you have written, and you're a prolific writer. Part of your activism is to write letters to the major newspapers, and you have been doing that. I have read, I think, more than one of your letters in this space that you have written, I think, to the Gleaner and also to the Observer. You have, in recent times, written to the Mirror in Montego Bay,
Oh yeah, man. All right, comes for the Western
The Western Mirror.
Friday. Yeah.
Right, and in your column, in the Western Mirror, in a few days ago, you asked, "Are we fair weather friends? Rastafari and Jamaica's debt to Cuba." I like the way you started it because you started where a lot of us in Jamaica can start in terms of your dedication. You said, "For my grandmother's father, who rests in Cuban earth, for my neighbors in Norwood, who saw again, for Mortimer Plano, born across the water, who taught us to see ourselves." A lot of people are talking about Jamaica's debt to Cuba, but you have broadened it to Rastafari and Jamaica's debt to Cuba, and you start with Mortimer Plano. Tell us why.
Um, like I think on quite a lot of levels, Cuba is connected to Jamaica. For me, it's on a personal level. I'm something with my grandmother, father, who died over there. Even with like Huey, them have Chancellor Hall, them have one of them dorms, I think named Che Splash all over Huey. And then in general in Norwood, Cuba, you have Cubans here, Haitians here, and like you interact with them in daily life. And then when you think about how deeply we're connected, I think we have to ask what kind of friends are we to them. And especially for Rastafari, knowing that Mortimer Plano come from Cuba. Just the fact that the name Martino with the O and the Plano with the O is a key indicator of the Spanish background we have.
Yes.
And you know, I mean, immigration and migration is a is a global topic right now, and but it's been a thing for us from like in the 1930s, from when we used to like to call ourselves the West Indies, and there was things like the Windrush and so. And to me, it kind of came out of that space, out of that timing with when Marcus Garvey them had travel up and down Earth, when Leonard Howell them up and down, moving up and down all over the world. And to me, Plano come out of that timing, leave from Cuba and come to Jamaica, and then not only leave Cuba and come to Jamaica, but he made a massive impact, like mentor Bob Marley, and then he offers books, like his books and literature leave a roadmap for the Rastafari community, and all of that is born out of the Cuban link, and I think we need to remember that. I mean, a lot of people like to be armchair activists, and like even when we go to the road and go to work at daytime now, and I mean most of people minds focused on Iran, and I mean Cuba 90 miles away, and you know what I mean, I don't think we're doing enough to discuss it, to think about it, and to move beyond just discussion and get into action.
How important is it? Two things. One is that it's interesting you mentioned Bob Marley. In your article, you didn't mention Rita, but I'm sure you know Rita Marley was also born in Cuba.
Yeah.
And that's also, that's also a Rastafari connection right there. But how important for us to be able, as a philosopher, to make that connection between what's happening in Cuba, even while we're bombarded by Iran. This is deliberate. The media not covering Cuba much, not covering Haiti much. That's also deliberate. So if they're telling us to look over here and we're looking over there. But how important is it for us to make that connection, that it is all connected? What's happening in Iran, what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz that everybody's talking about, or the Gates of Tears, the Bab al-Mandeb, is connected right back to what's happening in the Caribbean waters, in Cuba, Haiti, and the wider Caribbean waters. How important is it?
It's very important. To me, the US is facing its own economic collapse, and Trump is a response to that. And to me, every race has to do what they have to do to put themselves forward. But to me, the impetus is on us to get our business together and handle our business. And I mean, I think maybe the last 30 years has afforded us to become lulled or comfortable with the kind of politics that America plays. But at the end of the day, it's always the Monroe Doctrine. It's always U.S. business as usual. And I think this is a mission that is beyond the Prime Minister's reach in certain regard because Jamaica alone, standing alone, talking alone, he can incur his penalties, but I think this is something for the grassroots activists, and I think this is something for like the wider clerical bloc to deal with. And I think we should be looking at those kinds of options.
I totally agree with you, my brother, on that. Really, that this is a moment, an inflection point, a moment that has called us and is calling us together for unity. If we miss that, we are missing what the time is saying to us. So I really do agree with you on that. One of the things that you have called for and you've talked about, and especially if you put the focus on Rastafari in terms of what Rastafari owes to Cuba, you talk about a flotilla. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about that. Is this I know I've already seen one gone in, and I know I've heard conversations of people saying, "Oh yes, we need to do a flotilla," but there's a whole lot of talk and no action necessarily from the Caribbean. Is this a Rastafari thing, or you think a Rastafari-led option? And is there anything else that you would recommend, since you're calling on Rastafari and pointing them to the fact that, listen, we've got a debt to Cuba?
Well, when we put the flotilla out there, I don't know the exact logistics of how this would operate, but I think we need to begin to have the discussions about these logistics. I don't know what it's like for the average Jamaican in every community or whatever, but like in Montego Bay, and say we have to interface with Cubans every day, Haitians every day, just the same. And like I said, I know that the logistics can be done, it can be worked out. It's 90 miles, we can do the radio communicate, we can do what needs to be done. And where there's a way, there's a way. When might not be okay to say, but when people are running from US law, they escape on the US law, then find a way to Cuba, then do everything through Cuba. Whether they want to escape, U.S. Marshals or whatever. Yeah. So, when they have the will, then find them ways to Cuba, we send things to Cuba, then get things in Cuba. So, if there's a will, we can find a way. We can talk to Cubans on the ground here, we can set up some kind of dialogue and get the mission going. When Cuba have hurricane problems or when it was the Matazana fires, we deal with them and we send things to them and we send things to even Cayman when they have hurricane issues. So I know the logistics can be worked out and we need to get it done, but to me, this article or discussing it now is to foment that action, and I think it's necessary to put the ideas out there and start get the logistics going.
Mm-hmm. Because as you said, we are Cuba in so many ways, bloodlines, but you also talk about on a clear day, you talk about the 90-mile situation. Remind our listeners of how close we are to Cuba. If this was a country, if it was a region where snow fell, we could literally walk on the ice like the Bering Strait.
It's cross right into Cuba.
Yeah.
There's a small triangle between the north of Jamaica, the southern part of Cuba, and the western part of Haiti. And I think it's hard for me to not imagine that going all the way back into the possibly ancient history, that we've always been connected to that space and that angle. And like I say, on a clear day from the grill, from even certain points in Montego Bay, and even Blue Mountain across Cuba, and that should be enough impetus to tell you that they're very, very close. And if people in Norway will get them eye fixed by Cuban doctor. and like not one person, like two, three, four people. That means that we have a death on the ground and fix eyes for us. And that people are literally crazy. And people deal with it for them. So the deaths are generally deep, and we need to look into that.
Well, when I come back, let me take a quick break. And when I come back, I want to speak to you some more because I know you're very involved in the Rastafari community, and I know that you didn't write this article lightly. I know this is something that you considered when you moved it beyond Jamaica to say it is Rastafari and Jamaica. Rastafari has led so much in the past in terms of its resistance and in terms of its response to enslavement and oppression. The only indigenous group or movement, if you will, in this part of the world that has come that is a response to oppression and slavery, regardless of what we hear about indigeneity or about indigenous groups. Rastafari remains that group. So let me take a quick break and come back. All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. How we do this now, Peter? We're a little bit far from the... okay, let me do this. Let's take a break. A call to action, Yannick, is what you closed off the article with. And you talk about how Jamaica should organize a direct aid, even grassroots flotillas, as we said before, carrying food, medicine, and supplies to Cuba. And you, as you said earlier in the conversation, you said also in your article that it should be a people-led solidarity, not just state-level diplomacy. Do you see Rastafari, and to what extent do you see Rastafari leading this people-led solidarity? What would this look like? And I know I'm throwing three questions at you. What then? What next for Rastafari in this?
Well, like I say, I hope this is the beginning of discussion and like foment or stir the more academic aspects or parts of the movement. Like, you know what I mean? You know, Rasta run a broad spectrum, and somehow we are more vulnerable to problems. I mean, also not far I go through problems since even Melissa and still not get themselves together yet. But like the stronger among us and the people, like the more academic among us can get the thing going, and I think we need to begin to form some kind of grassroots coalition, not just Rasta, but I mean with other peoples that owe debts to Cuba, whether it be the church groups, them also, like I said, the university community, Chancellor Hall and Chair. I think they should be having some kind of thoughts about this right now. And
I know you as a leader in the Rastafari community, Yannick, have you taken this to Rastafari? I know the Coral Gardens observations are coming up, which I think would be a fairly good space. I
plan to ask them to discuss these ideas there, but like on the ground on a daily level, like anywhere we eat and meet and greet, these ideas go out there, we discuss them. Whether it be around a Tampa, Millennium Picture, or we Negros them around a Mobile. So.
Well, congratulations on the article. I found it a really good read. How can persons who want to access this paper, how can they find the article?
Well, as a local paper, I'm not really online.
If you're in Mobile, buy it in Mobile.
Yeah, if you're in Mobile, buy it in Mobile.
Yeah. Before you go, I just wanted to quickly, because we mentioned Coral Gardens, and this is a space where, as you said, you hope to raise this issue and to ask them to have a conversation about it. Just give us a quick reminder of when we talk about the Coral Gardens massacre, what we're talking about, and if you know anything of what the activities are like. I know I'm taking you totally by surprise. What the activities are like coming up
this year. To be honest, I haven't been that active active with the Cargans group this year, like work and stuff, and different kind of focus in life and different space. But like Sister Nania, so I know them having the event this year and them doing the thing. 'Cause I was just reading the poster yesterday.
I haven't seen a poster. I was surprised that this is the first year I haven't seen or heard anything about whether or not the activities are on.
Yeah, I think it might be around by Albion, but like
You don't have the details.
I don't have the details on that now.
All right. Well, Sister Nani, send us the info if you can. Text it to us if you can, and we'll make a quick announcement. Yannick, we're looking forward to where this goes. I'll give you the final word on this in terms of this people-led solidarity, in terms of the extent to which we are becoming fair weather friend. What's a fair weather friend, by the way?
Alright, like, you know what I mean? If you're with a friend, I just somebody where only did it when good times, you know what I mean?
When the medical missions are here and working.
Yeah, when we get in the medical missions, you know what I mean? When it's time to discuss music and the culture, then we can say, we know we're going to visit the social club, or I know all this about Che Guevara when we want to be armchair activists. But I mean, to me, to be a real friend, you have to stand up when time's tough, you know what I mean, in a stormy weather. And like all of us go through the same storms in the Caribbean with hurricanes. I mean,
and Cuba is always there. That is the bottom line. Thank you so much, my brother, Yannick Messor, as usual. Deep thinking, critical thinking, and a really, really active Rastafari in the community. Thank you, my brother. We're just over a month into the World War, into World War III. It has not been announced. You know, I know that there are, academically, there are, I think, rules regarding what a world war is. And one of the rules is it has to be announced. It has to include many countries. It has to be a global war. You know, I was just looking at the countries involved in this war. And yes, you have those who are attacking Iran. So you have Israel and the United States leading that. But there's a very strange thing happening on this island. Not just this island, but globally, where here we find ourselves in the middle of a bellicose interregnum. And at the same time, we have people saying to us that what we are seeing, what we're feeling, what we experience, what we know by our senses, our intuition, and our third eye is not happening. Europe is fully in the war. Europe is fully in the war. The fact that they are not sending ships to the Strait of Hormuz don't mean they're not in the war. And I can, you know what, I probably don't have time to do it now, but I can probably bring that up, you know, into the extent to which there are the world is involved in this war, not just the US and Israel. And there is an interesting situation going on. People are saying that it is not a global war. So we have Russia has crossed over into the war. We had Lavrov saying it is World War III this morning. We're seeing an escalation in the risks across the globe with oil and gas and fertilizer and helium and so on, you name it. And I'm trying to find the countries, because the war may not be officially global, but major actors are involved. They have expanded the battlefield. Ukraine is gone over there to go and give weapons to Israel and others. We have NATO fully involved in this. And remember, as I said before, you know, the fracturing of the rules-based order and the Western unity and the United Nations and so on, it is all part of this. It's all planned, by the way. All right, I am trying to find the countries that are involved. We know we have the non-Western countries, we have the Western countries, we have NATO, we have the European Union, we have the United States. countries in the so-called Middle East, which is West Asia. They're all involved. All right, I think I'll find those countries for you in a little while. We have China directly involved, even though China says it's not involved, but China is directly involved, because when you talk about giving information or logistics or whatever it is, we have Russia on the battlefield. We have mass mobilization in Europe and North America, and we're seeing it expanding full into Africa, the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea. I'll come back to that later on. Yeah, Edwin Allen, congratulations. JC, congratulations, but congratulations to all of the schools that did so well. What an exciting chance. Goodness gracious me. Don't know how we're just talking about it, but it is what it is. Congratulations to all the teachers, all the students, all the coaches. And it was just brilliant, even though we had so much rain, but really a great chance again. On the phone lines now, Dr. Devon Taylor, my brother and friend, president of JABEM. Phone lines. Dr. Devon Taylor, how you doing, my brother?
Doing well.
Yes.
Omar make a vaccine where they'll just immunize against the displacement from beaches, you know what I mean?
That's where you're failing. That's where you're failing. That's a vaccine you need to make. I'll leave that to you, Devon, right? I'll leave that to you. That's your thing to do. I'll support you. This is the only vaccine that I'm going to back, 100%. But Devon, you were on last week. We talked about the budget presentation, the Prime Minister's presentation in the budget, and the fact that he said to encapsulate this, he is going to be replacing the Beach Management Control Act. At the time you had gone through it, you had noticed the weaknesses in the, not just the weaknesses, but also the contradictions, the conflicting statement, and the extent to which the budget itself was a budget for the tourism industry, which was in direct contravention or conflict with access, if you will, to our water sources and the beaches. Since then, you've also put out a press release, JABEM, calling for the policy put out by the government to be withdrawn, so that the Jamaica's the proposed beach access and management policy, you say, JABEM says, should be withdrawn. Give us an update as to where we are now after a full week of you looking at this, putting out this press release and the responses so far.
Yes, well, give thanks for putting all of that into context. So we are currently mobilizing civil society, right? And we're mobilizing the grassroots, sharing all the content that is in this policy. And giving people also the time to look at the document, read the document, to make sure that this is not JABEM's interpretation only, but this is the interpretation that every Jamaican from all walks of life and all these different civic institutions, ranging from religious to environmental to social to economic, would have seen the document, looked at it, read it, and we cannot sign off on this as a nation. And so we're having these discussions with these individuals, and we're continuing the education, because everyone is in support of the statement that we've made to withdraw it, because no law should be passed in Jamaica that gives the country a conditionality to be satisfied before you could exercise rights. That is a big insult to the Jamaican people, that you must meet these sets of conditions before you could exercise a right. And the right is not over personal property. The right is not over private property. The right is not over anything that would violate the liberty of any individual. Right? It is to the resources, the treasures of that the government have set a conditional right for its people to access it, and we're saying that is not true. That's not supposed to be like that.
And so the call that JABEM is making, it is really a wholesome call to say, this, you cannot proceed in the way that you have outlined, with what you have outlined, and then do what it is that you say you're about to do. Have you had a response from the Prime Minister's office, or the Ministry of Environment and Water, or the Foreign Affairs Ministry, you name it, anybody at all from government? Have you had a response?
No one has reached directly out to Jabem, but what they have been doing, right, they have been making the rounds, you know, and different radio network to say that, no, it's a good policy for the country, right? And they have made several blunders in their proclamation as to their justification that this is the best policy for the country, right? And that is the only way they're communicating to the public, right? Are communicating to Jabem is through the media to say we are refuting what you're saying. But I can't understand how they will do that when the document clearly states that we have no right, right? And what the document further goes on to says, well, okay, we're going to qualify these rights, and some of these conditions are, how many of you could go on a beach, right? What you could do there, you know what I mean? You know, how you should behave there, right? And how you dispose of your garbage there, right? And I'm kind of simplifying the language that you're using in there, because back in the day, and still there's a way in which, you know, as my sister, Rachel Goff would say, the mass disciplining of black people. The way how they discipline black people is, so many of you cannot gather in a particular space. When you get in a particular space, this is how you should behave, right? When you get in this particular space, well, you're too nasty. So when you put the rubbish over there, sir, these were always instruments of how they corral, really how they control people. And it's the same language of the colonialists that was used as example as what the licensee, which is the hotel industry, the villa, who would own that beach license, would inflict upon the people. And as I said last week, this condition is not set by the NRCA or the government. The licensee, which is the person who is operating the business on the beach, would be the person who sets the rule as to how the Jamaican public would access the beach and use the sea. And that is unacceptable. So we have not heard from them directly. We wrote this press release, we shared it with the media houses, and we said to them, withdraw the policy, right? They had an opportunity last week when Jackson Miller brought us on a program, all angles, and they had invited the Minister of Environment, the President of the Hotel Association was invited, and while I was waiting on the Zoom, the President of the Hotel Association had some difficulty with his Zoom, but the Minister of Environment, I think, said he had some prior travel arrangements and did not join. But if this is such a serious issue, upon which 75% of the Jamaican economy is going to be based upon, you have to make the time.
Well, there are many ways
you should make the time to come and debate this with the public.
Well, there are many ways to deal with an interview when you're having difficulty with the Zoom, as we know very well here, as media houses. You come on the phone and we put up a picture up on the thing. So there's a greater story there, if you ask me. And I'm not, Dion is a pretty good journalist. I'm not saying it's her. I'm just saying, it's weird if somebody's having a difficulty with a Zoom that you still can't come on the program because the phone lines work just as well. All right, let me take a quick break and I'll come right back with much more. I can see Dr. Devon Taylor that you look as if you're in Jamaica. The background there looks like you're up on the beach. Which part are there? That a seaside business.
We're at Mansion Hill. We're up in Mansion Hill this morning.
You got to reach people in place. Let me take a break. I know he's going to be mad at me.
No, we have spread the vaccine up as a first.
Yes, spread the vaccine up as a first. But Devon, you might have did ask me for coming with you this morning. I do not understand that you could have leave at about 10 o'clock and I would have joined you in Portland. What kind of business is that? My favorite parish. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with much more. Looking in the aftermath of the Prime Minister's announcement that government will be withdrawing the Beach Management Control Act, they have tabled a policy. Dr. Devon Taylor of JABEM, they have been going through the policy, and at the end of the day, they have called for this policy to be totally withdrawn because it really, at the end of the day, is an neo-colonial document that is probably rivaling the current colonial document that they say they're going to replace. And at the end of the day, Devon, it is not even a replacement. The Prime Minister used the word replace in Parliament. But from what we're seeing from the policy, this is, as you said last week, these are amendments, not replacement of the document at all.
It is. But what the Prime Minister also said, that he recognized that the document will need to be replaced and that this is the first step in replacing the document. But, I mean, when you examine the document, and you add up on the screen just now, some of the most, dangerous component of it. So if you could really put those back up for,
yes,
the public to see them, right?
Could you go, are you able to go through them?
Yes, I can definitely go through this because these will be the areas of greatest changes to the document, right? And as you can see, we're capturing here around 8 of those different, new features which are further entrench the coloniality of the document. We spoke about the qualified right component, right? That they are thinking about, in this era, that they will grant us this freedom, and our freedom to use it for sure would not be inherent. It would be conditional. We went into that, and we cannot have rights in our country that is conditional. Right must be inherent and fundamental. That's the foundation of democracies, right? But some of the other most outrageous component within this policy is the ability of the cabinet to really sell beaches, right? And so this is something that has gone too far, that now they're going to entrench in law that they can sell them. There's no place in the current Beach Control Act of 1956 that states that the government can alienate the nation, sell it off, transfer to someone permanently, right? While the document preserve all 1956, pre-1956, construct at the foreshore, the document ended everything and reset that the foreshore and the floor of the sea is vested and controlled by the crown, right? There were people who owned some docks whose land title extended onto the foreshore, and the crown says we're going to preserve those, but there were not many. And I've heard an argument placed that pre-1956, everybody's land title went into the sea, and that is grossly incorrect. The foreshore and the floor of the sea are always vested in the crown.
Where did you hear that? Where did you hear
and
that?
They were by colonial grant.
Where did you hear
that? Was on a network. There was the Minister of Environment had said that on Nationwide, and I do not want to paraphrase in here, but there was an interview done, I think with Cliff Hughes, and the interview is informed that pre-1956, all land titles, was to the foreshore, and the foreshore was basically private, and that's a grossly incorrect statement. The floor of the sea and the foreshore in all British colonies, right, was vested in the crown. And Jamaica, embraced it.
Let me sorry to interrupt you, Devon, but as a matter of fact, if you want to challenge this openly in terms of what's happening in the United Kingdom right now, there is a conversation in the United Kingdom right now about this very same thing, and the extent to which the crown, meaning King Charles III, now owns what land he owns, and how rental for the coastline is going into his pockets, and all of that. So there's also among people like the Republic and those who hashtag not my king, they're having this very same conversation. it's a very same kind of law, isn't it? Britain don't even have a constitution, but we totally wrapped up in Britain's constitution. So yeah, I know that I too know that is erroneous. That argument is erroneous. I'm not quite sure where that came from, why it came up, and why it is being unchallenged in previously credible spaces.
Absolutely, and we're challenging it. You know what I mean? We're challenging all those things. You know, I mean, we're challenging that you can't sell beaches. We're challenging that, you know, you cannot remove rock face. You cannot remove the barriers that protect the land to make artificial beaches. And this is something that is going to be entrenched in the new beach access and management policy. That was never part of the Beach Control Act of 1956 that gives you permission to remove just acres of rock faces to build artificial beach, to which Jamaicans would have no right. Explicitly state in this policy that artificial beaches created by developers, you know, where they make land out of water by removing that, you know, coastline with those high intensity wave that would destroy the land, and then that property will be divested and controlled by, you know, that developer in perpetuity, basically taking away rights. No, the Beach Control Act never did that, and this act is doing that.
So let me ask
the Beach Control Act also did not, you know, speak about.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that, you know, just to complete the circle of dispossession that is in this document about overwater bungalow, taking areas of the sea, selling it off for 25 years, right? For 20 years, and no one could go there. So they're appropriating the sea. And the Beach Control Act of 1956 never went there. But this document, you know, went there, right? The Beach Control Act never says hotel must charge people for access. It says the foreshore is preserved in the crown and the sea is preserved. And these things really should be held in trust for the Jamaican people. This document says they're going to encourage hotel to charge us, you know, some fees to access the beach. And this is don't own the foreshore. They don't own the sea. This is
a point, you know, Devon, because this is why I'm saying.
No, go ahead.
That this this new document that we have in front of us from the government of Jamaica really is more colonial than the colonial document itself, and that is frightening.
It is very, very scary and frightening, Kabul, to see that we are past 1956. 70 years ago, this law came into being in Jamaica. And 70 years later, instead of the government, free waterway, recognizing that we need to decolonize the country, remove those colonial era law that, you know, was responsible for the oppression of our people, they are further entrenching in that document dispossession and alienation from the coastline, you know what I mean, by proposing to really create artificial beaches with no rights to the Jamaican people, to have the ability to blatantly sell beaches, right, and to state that all will have our qualified rights that are based upon, you know, rules set by multinational and foreign corporations.
A new rules-based order that's coming on the backside of this new world economic order. Finally, Devon, what next? Where does JABEM go from here? What activities are scheduled? What plans are in place?
So I share a flyer with you.
Oh, we just had it
next week Saturday.
Yes,
next week Saturday we're calling upon communities in and around, you know, St. Ann, but also across the nation. Because St. Ann is ground zero. But we're asking the nation to come join us in a rally, you know, right down there in Miami Bay on the sidewalk. We did one about 2 months ago from 11 to 3 a.m. And this march is really about, you know, I mean, rights. I mean, this protest, this gathering, this rally that we're having, this rally, and I need to use the correct terminology because I know, you know, what they'll do. We're having a rally in place. We're not going to be marching. We're going to be on the sidewalk. We're going to, you know, dissect this beach policy, you know, for the community, because this is ground zero. This is where JABEM started from, because we were dispossessed from Miami Bay Beach. and we'll be challenging the cancellation of our birthright by giving us no, fundamental rights to the foreshore.
And
we're going to be challenging it.
This is this Saturday in Miami Bay on the road, or where exactly in Miami Bay?
Sidewalk. We're going to be on the sidewalk. We're going to be right in front of the community owned property there, and we're going to be right in front of our brothers and sisters' gates, right along the sidewalk in Miami Bay. April the 4th from 11 to 3 p.m.
All right. So once again, Rally for Beach Rights, Miami Bay St. Anne say no to qualified rights. New beach policy attacks public rights, cancellation of beach birthright, selling of public beaches, eviction from the foreshore, corruption of the the Prescriptive Rights Act, no rights to artificial beaches, privatization of the sea. Saturday, April 4, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the sidewalk at Miami Bay Beach. Basically, I'll be there, Devon. I'll see you there. Before you go,
give thanks.
Before you go,
turn
the camera around. Let me see the beach, because you're alone can't just dip on the beach of Mansion Hill. Turn the camera around. Let us see what's. Are you able to?
Well, I'm trying to see if you're to do that.
Okay.
But I definitely can.
What?
Can show the walk and show the community that this is the Mansion Hill Fishing Beach, and under this new policy, this is a beach that was established through common rights, common law, to our use of it, and it's protected in perpetuity. But what they want to do with the policy is to license these beaches, bring them on a licensing framework, and if they do so, those licenses can be transferred, right? And so you run the risk that this wonderful space in the Mansion Hill Harbor would be transferred to private interests. And so we are saying, no, keep these fishing beaches, right, in their original ownership, construct. We could really help the fishing community to really make them stronger. And I have to say, there's some of that work going on with fisheries, that they're training these fisher folks. But we are saying that we do not want the beaches, the fishing beaches, to come on a licensing regime, because that opens up the fishing beaches to be privatized. Leave them on the community. No licensing.
You're breaking up.
Publish that these beaches are community control on.
Devon, we're losing you, but we're seeing the beautiful, and I know the challenges we're facing, but what a sight for sore eyes on this Sunday morning. Portland is so beautiful, Mansion Hill is so beautiful, but remember, we don't have access to all these beaches, and fishermen who are on a lot of these beaches are being challenged now to ensure that they fight to keep them going. Thank you so much, Dr. Devon Taylor, and Saturday we'll be at in Miami Bay, 11 o'clock.
Give thanks.
All right, Devon Taylor there. You are inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. Going to be taking a quick break. And after that, we come back to our next special guest. Our next very special guest, and I tell you who is coming up next as you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. I'm going to be speaking with Karen N. Wilson Robinson, an experienced litigator who honed her skills at several big law firms before transitioning to private practice. Her practice is focused on trademark prosecution and litigation, patent or patent prosecution and litigation, intellectual property, counseling, copyrights, entertainment, and residential real estate. She is a member of the New York and New Jersey Bar, the Eastern and Southern Districts of New York and District of New Jersey, and licensed to practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office and in Jamaica as well. Karen has a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from St. Francis College and a JD from Pennsylvania State University. Dickinson School of Law. She is a member of the New York Bar Association and sits on the Patents Committee, where she teaches patent litigation to law clerks for several judges throughout the United States. She is a vice chair of Team Jamaica Bickle, Inc., president of the Immaculate Conception High School Alumni Association, New York chapter, and sits on the board of the Dominic Alessandro James Foundation in Jamaica. You may have heard the news, and I'm happy that Karen is joining us this morning to help us to understand it, that of the case against Meta and YouTube in the United States, in California to be exact, and the jury finding Meta and YouTube guilty or liable, if you will, to and I think there is a $6 million or $3 million damages. Not quite sure if the punitive damages are. Yes, I think so. But anyway, Karen is going to bring us up to date. Floodgates of litigation is what they say are going to happen from now. We'll see if that is true. But long and short of it is this. A Los Angeles jury found Meta Platforms and Alphabet Inc. via YouTube legally liable in a landmark civil trial on social media addiction. The jury awarded $6 million in damages to the plaintiff. And a lot of the conversations we're hearing is that this is a precedent-setting case. We want to talk about that because this is a civil case, so the extent to which it's precedent-setting, we'll hear from Karen. It is the first of its kind to hold platforms responsible for addictive design and mental harm. What does this mean? We're joined by my very special guest, Karen N. Wilson Robinson. Hi, Karen. I'm not seeing her, but I guess she's there. You with us, Karen? I'm not seeing her.
Yes, good morning. I'm here.
Oh, hi. Good morning. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Lots of celebration, if you will, but certainly a lot of chatter around this case against Meta and YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat. Give us a background to this. Tell us about the case. What was this all about? Who were involved?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it's considered what we call a bellwether case. It was a test case, and as you say, it's probably going to open the floodgates. But so basically, you have a young lady who filed an action in 2022 alleging that these platforms were addictive and that they caused her harm. Now, while the case was filed in 2022, there were several cases filed at the same time. And we consider this a bellwether because I guess all the conditions around this one was right to test what I think was a novel theory by the plaintiff. So it has a long history, 2022 verdict in 2026. So there was a lot of things that occurred between 2022 and now. Particularly, Meta and Google tried to get the case dismissed, basically saying that there was no case here, there was no cause of action, that it was properly rooted in the third-party content that the individual was viewing and not them, not to what they're doing. But the novelty of this is that the plaintiff's argument wasn't about third-party content. The plaintiff's argument was about the design of the platforms. Particularly, their allegation was that the design of the platform was negligent, having the infinite scroll ability, autoplay, and these algorithm feeds that created or curated the content specific to the individual is really what caused the harm. So it wasn't the content itself, it was the design of the platform. So it took it out of the statutory protections that Mega was alleging that they had. You know, they couldn't be held liable for third-party content, and it brought it squarely in what we call products liability matter, meaning it was the product that was the problem, the design of the product. They weren't focusing on the content. And this is what created the unique ness of this case and why it was considered a test case, because it was the first time it was novel. It was a novel argument that they were utilizing, and ultimately proved successful. So after the case was filed, as I stated, Mega tried to get it kicked out by doing what's called a motion to dismiss. And they were saying they were protected by the statutory guidelines. In fact, there is the statute that they were referring to is called Section 230, which basically says that, they're shielded from any liability for user content. They also tried to raise an argument about their First Amendment right to have curated content, and it would impact or affect their ability to choose and organize how they curate their content. So they really tried to get it kicked out on those grounds. But the courts found that the design argument was valid, and that they accepted the plaintiff's argument that the design alleged flaws, well, no longer alleged, they're finding that there were flaws, were in fact valid, and that the features, including the algorithm and the infinite scrolling, the autoplay, could actually cause liability. So they weren't able to avoid the action. They were forced to move forward. They subsequently went on to file, well, there was discovery. In a litigation, you have discovery where they exchange information. The plaintiff is allowed to ask for documents. The defendants can ask for documents. And I think one thing that really propelled this case forward is that prior to the filing, there were documents that were released that alluded to issues with the platform. So when during discovery, of course, they get more information to bolster their arguments. And after discovery, Meta again tried to get the case ended by filing motions for summary judgment, or there's a method called summary adjudication that they can do in California, meaning they wanted to get a ruling on certain aspects of the case, and they also failed at that, which is why the case went to trial. At trial, the juries had to sift through a lot of information, including academic or scholastic articles on the issue of social harm to teens, because it's a concern, which is why you have the floodgates of these lawsuits. Yes. These teenagers, I don't know about you, I remember having an event at my home where you looked and you saw all of the teenagers sitting together, and instead of engaging with each other, they're all on their phones, right? So it's a real issue faced in the schools, in your homes, where these young folks are so tied to their devices and social media. So there's been a lot of studies on it. And the jury had to shift through competing arguments. There's some studies that said they are harmful to children, teenagers, and there are others that say they're not, but they had to really go through all of this. You also had competing arguments from, my apologies, I'm sorry.
No, I'm thinking, and this is why we hear this comparison to the tobacco industry, which I'm wondering about, but I suppose we'll get to that with the competing arguments, agnotology, if you will. But it's an interesting thing, because this was a civil case, and Meta has said that they will appeal. What does that mean? And it's, I'm just moving it because in the interest of time, thank you so much for kind of laying that foundation for us so we understand better what has happened. YouTube, I suppose, also has its own response to this. What do you know in terms of what will happen on the backside of this? Have we heard anything else from Meta or YouTube if they will appeal? And what does it mean, set a precedence, if this is a civil case and not one that's going through another type of court?
So an appeal means that they are going to go to the higher court. So this was in the, this is in the, well, so there are levels of courts. You have the court of first impression, and you have an appellate division, then you have the United States Supreme Court. So they're going to go to the appellate court to try to have the decision reversed. So they're basically, for you to appeal, you have to argue that the courts overlooked some key facts. So it'll be interesting to see what they come with, to try to convince the court that the appellate division, that the lower court got it wrong. They'd really have to go back, parse through any rulings that may have occurred. You know, as a litigator, one thing you want to do is what we call preserve the record. So you want to ensure that everything, any rulings that was made during the trial was captured, and they got, you know, probably going over everything to see what would be appealable, what they could take to the appellate division to say, hey, the jury got it wrong in this instance, and we need you to take a look at this again. And they're doing this because, as you rightfully identified, it has now opened a lot of opportunity for other litigants in the same space. The day before this decision, or this jury verdict, there was another verdict in Texas that was brought by the state of Texas, and that was a $375 million verdict. So again, having these losses is going to definitely encourage other litigants to move forward with their case under the same theory, that it was a design flaw for these platforms and not necessarily the content.
Karen, help me to understand this, because it's reminding me of the glyphosate cases, where we all know glyphosate is in Roundup. We all know the studies are out there saying it causes cancer. There are massive cases, and a lot of payout, billions of dollars of payout over time. But at the same time, just last week, we saw the president, or 2 weeks ago, of the United States signing an executive order. Glyphosate, in a sentence, is too big to fail. It's a national security product, even though it is so harmful. As opposed to tobacco, which is, it's a whole other thing. Vaping is still, tobacco just slaps something on and says it causes cancer, and everybody, people are still smoking, people are still buying. Do you think that we're in that moment where, because they're all using social media anyway, I'm talking about government, academia, military, the whole works, Wall Street was too big to fail, that the optimism that people seem to have in terms of how the litigation is going, how the law is dealing with this, that this might be a little bit premature?
Not necessarily. I think there can be some retroactive steps that they probably will take, because one thing that came out was a failure to warn. Now, if you've warned folks about the effects of what's, or the risks, and people assume those risks, then they're not liable. So in this instance, and I think in a lot of these larger cases, if you fail to warn, if you know, and I think a lot of this hinges on what they knew, because there's documentary evidence that they knew of the potential harms, they knew of the risks to the public, and they ignored that. Why? Because of the economic benefits. They're making money, and they're just focused on the bottom line. So they didn't want to reveal these risks or reveal these pitfalls that could affect those bottom line. And I guess this is where we go to, these industries are too big to fail because of the economic value that they have. But to the extent that you are aware of these risks and pitfalls, if you have these big, large letters or words saying, this is what could happen if you do this, then, if the consumer chooses to continue with that product, then they've assumed the risk, and you can no longer, it takes it out of that litigation realm. So, the cases that already exist may go forward, but if these platforms for the future, put these warnings up front very visible, because one of the aspects of this case was that they were arguing that neither the mother or the alleged victim read their terms of use. And the plaintiff's argument was, well, if there's something this important, it can't be buried in the term of use. It has to be upfront, bold, very readily apparent, so it could be seen and not, you didn't have to go parsing for it. So in these other cases, to the extent that they know Roundup causing cancer, I think now you're seeing advertisements about these, and the bottom of the screen you'll see may cause cancer, or allegations of use could cause cancer. You're seeing these disclaimers when they're doing these advertisements.
That's why I'm so concerned, Karen. It's because, oh goodness, my own father was poisoned by Roundup. It not just causes cancer, it causes dementia, Alzheimer's, and all that. And the most we get is a warning. But if the country to which these, for example, Jamaica as a nation, has said to us, with all of the protests, the marches that we've had over time, they have said to us that nothing's wrong with it. And then we have the US president signing an executive order saying that it is a matter of national security, and so the production will continue, and it will continue to be available. The too big to fail, like Wall Street, like glyphosate, like the COVID vaccine, if you will, at the time. Now we're getting a whole different, I suppose we're going to see a whole lot of lawsuits coming out of that, or regardless of the 230, like kind of issues around that. And I'm going to take a break. I want to come back and pick up from there to say, what does this mean in the bigger scheme of things? We expect so much from MySpace. I don't know your age, Karen, but you look pretty young to me. I don't know if you remember MySpace, Flickr. You remember Flickr?
Absolutely, yes, I do.
High five. I mean, we were warning from them days, and here we are now. But for those of us who have been warning from them days to these days, we're saying to ourselves, this is good, but this is not it. But let me take a break. All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and my very special guest online is Karen N. Wilson Robinson, attorney at law, and she's been watching very, very closely the social media litigation, the cases that are unfolding in the United States. And obviously, Karen, we've seen decision being taken in Australia regarding age of use, and we have also seen discussions underway in the United Kingdom. So this is something that's it is burgeoning, it is blossoming. People are talking about this, and there are lots of cases pending. But with just about 3 or 4 minutes to go, I'm going to give you the time to talk about what does this mean in the wider scheme of things. And please remember to talk to us about whether or not this is a precedented case, if this sets a precedent, considering that it was a civil case, and when does it really become precedent setting?
So it is precedent because it's the first of its kind. And while it was in California, other states can cite to it because it's the only one of its kind. So here in the United States, that's what makes it precedent. Going to the appellate division, if the appellate court now, let me take a step back. It would be persuasive for the other states, in that the courts and judges in the other states can choose to follow the decisioning there. Mm-hmm. Going to the appellate division, if the ruling holds in the appellate division, then that's when it carries a lot more weight, because you have an appellate court that says, yes, we agree to this. So if it holds up there, then you have the issue of how far does the liability go? Is it going to is going to be higher damages awarded, etc. And if upheld, it could force these platforms to redesign their apps. Maybe limit the addictive features. Make sure that there are more visible warnings for the platforms. Mm-hmm. And it's eye-opening because now it has raised the awareness here in the United States that these platforms have to really know take some action. They can't simply hide behind the third party content protections that they've had. They really now have to be mindful that, this decision is there and it could have far reaching implication across the board. Now, one thing I think we didn't mention is that both TikTok and Snapchat were in this action and they settled before going to trial. Once that decisioning on the motion to dismiss and the motions for summary judgment were made and they realized that the court was open to the novel idea that is the design flaw and not the third party content, they decided to settle in advance, so they did not go to trial, so there's no verdict as against them. However, I think that would have prompted them, and I don't work for any of these entities, but it would prompt them to take some step to ensure that they are putting in these safeguards for children. Now, on the flip side, we could argue, well, where are the parents? Where are the parents of these children? If a child is sitting on their phone for 4, 5, 6 hours straight, where are the parents? And that was raised. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to what they're saying. These apps have to put in safeguards.
Because I do talk about design. They went for the product, not for the content.
Absolutely.
And this makes it, and I suppose it's hard to argue parental supervision when you're already saying this is as addictive as cocaine because of how you have designed this product.
Absolutely.
Does TikTok and Snapchat does it become moot if this goes further, for example, and they lose Meta and YouTube if they go to appeal and lose? Does it become moot for those who have settled?
No, they settled, meaning that they decided it wasn't, it didn't make sense for them to continue fighting. So I don't know what those settlement agreements were. I haven't had access to them.
Yes.
I don't know if they're public, but it means they're out of the case altogether, and it's just Meta and Google that are taking it further.
What about Congress? To make something really happen, does it have to be a decision by Congress as opposed to or in tandem with what's happening through the courts? And I have a minute, sorry.
Sure. It could be codified in law if it gets to that state, because then that it would. But again, these are corporate entities, and you really don't have legislation that's going to control how they conduct business, because that would have a stifling effect on businesses, correct? Right? So it really comes down to whether there will be some statutory guidelines similar to the protections they have under Section 230 for third-party content. But if it's a design, I don't think that it would be codified in any kind of legislation, because you're going to be stifling innovation. You're going to be stifling anyone's ability to create some gadget or invention that's supposed to be revolutionary, right? So I don't think it would get to that congressional level. I think it has to come down to their policies within the corporations, the policies and protections that they'll implement to ensure that they don't find themselves in a litigation regarding their policies and their designs.
Exactly. And then at the same time, we haven't even factored in AI into all of this and where it's going. We look over at XAI is doing a whole other thing, a WeChat situation, because if you go at the WeChat as we have in China, that's a whole different design. And I don't even know the extent to which it falls into the ruling that we had there from the court, the finding from the jury. It's fascinating how this is unfolding and what is likely to happen.
And isn't that what technology is all about?
Yeah.
It is wonderful because it's designed to make our lives easier. But on the flip side, it poses these pitfalls and these risks. So how do you weigh the risk? How do you balance the risk and the rewards of technology?
Karen, I'm so happy to have had you on. Thank you so much. I look forward to our continuing networking and relationship inside of this program from time to time. Thank you so much, my sister, for taking the time and for helping us to understand this ruling. I'm at 8:42, and we're going to our next very special guest inside of the forum this morning. He's been standing by for a while, our brother Pierre Labossiere, co-founder of the Haiti Action Committee. and the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund. He's been working with Haiti's grassroots movement that is engaged in the struggle for justice and democracy. HAC and HERF provide information regarding conditions on the ground in Haiti, assist refugees, and support community-based initiatives and institutions working for the liberation and the rebuilding of Haiti. My brother Pierre Labossiere, it is so good to see you.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much, my sister Kabu.
Yes, I'm hearing you now. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. I said thank you very much for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much for coming on, Brother Pierre. We sent out an SOS for you, and Brother Akomutota found you. You were just about the people's business. But thank you so much for taking the time out. Pierre, as we said, a lot happening on the ground in Haiti. I mean, this is a continuing situation, an ongoing situation. We're not frightened by a lot of it when it's not necessarily shocking. It is how dare they even continue till now, and where is a change coming from? What about us in the Caribbean? How are we complicit in what's ongoing in Haiti? Last week, we started a conversation about the kill chain technology, AI technology, that I personally feel is being tested in Haiti, in Sudan, in Somalia, in Gaza, in other places of the world that we see war going on now, also in Iran. But can you bring us up to date with the current situation in Haiti, as only you can do for us, my brother?
Yes, my sister. I want to say before I start, I send a special salute to all the listeners of your show and viewers, along with particularly to my brother Akomutota, who found me.
Yes.
So, okay. Well, what's happening is usually when you read reports in the media, they always begin the story of Haiti with just the latest or probably either the earthquake. Now they've moved it since the assassination of former President Jovenel Moïse. However, the story goes, I'd like to pull it back a bit to the coup d'etat of 2004, when on Haiti's bicentennial, the year of the bicentennial of the Haitian Independence Day, the US, France, and Canada in the lead carried out a kidnapping coup d'etat against President Aristide, his wife.
My brother, I'm so sorry, Brother Pierre Labossiere. I'm good because I have a time signal. Let me just do this sort of rightly, my brother Pierre Labossiere, taking us back to that coup.
Yes. And so it was a kidnapping coup, and it's interesting to see how recently, since the same coup took place against President Maduro of Venezuela and his wife Celia Flores, how some in the media make it appear as it's the first time. You see, this is that kind of amnesia that doesn't explain the overall situation. But it happened in Haiti on February 29, 2004. And I want to say thank you to all those who stood with us in solidarity against that coup, particularly the CARICOM countries. Also, you had Cuba and Venezuela who stood firmly against it, and a large sector of the African organization, I believe, I want to say OAU, but I think it's now the African Union. They stood against it, but which was very commendable. So what that coup did, it resulted in the killing of over 10,000 of our brothers and sisters, causing untold disruption in the community. People's fields were burned down, their businesses were burned, people were exiled. And so we are talking 22 years ago. And in 2010, what we had is a terrible earthquake in which 310,000 people were killed. And since then, a series of devastating hurricanes and what have you. And what I'm bringing out here is the suffering that has been heaped on Haiti. Some of it is man-made, some of it is natural. We had in 2021, there was a massive earthquake that wreaked havoc on the south of Haiti, where I'm from, and that was another terrible one. And so there has been a lack of housing. and a lack of real support by not only by the government of Haiti, but also by the occupying powers, because the UN has been in charge occupying Haiti since the coup d'etat of 2004. And so 22 years later, instead of the country being rebuilt and moving forward, you see the country being regressed, being destroyed systematically. Now we are faced with a death squad, a paramilitary death squad that the press identified as gangs. But this death squad is actually, you have high members in high positions in the government who are part of it and supporting it. And this is according to records. It's not just me talking. The UN has called out these people, named them, put them under sanction, but the sanctions are not really meant to bite. It's good press to say they're under sanction, but the fact is that they recognize and have named some of these people, and the politicians, high-level government officials, have been providing weapons and money to these people, and are currently, and many of them have been warning them ahead of time when some of the good people in the police are trying to do an operation, they get pre-warned.
Yes.
And so they're able to escape. And who are the victims generally? It's members of the population.
And I want to underscore something here, because you talk about in the news, whether it's here or anywhere else in the Caribbean, we hear about gangs and how terrible these gangs are. You're saying these are paramilitary death squad, and
Correct.
they involve and are funded by others. And I want you to spend some time talking about that, because this information is known, isn't it?
It is known. It's been in several UN reports. The US government has actually banned some of those people, put them on a banned list, and named them former government officials, presidents. You're talking about, various people, and also a key to this are members of the Haitian ruling elite or the oligarchy. A number of them have been named as well. Mm-hmm. But that's where it stands at that level. Mm-hmm. But the beat goes on, so to speak. They continue, many of those named continue to function in their businesses. It's as if nothing has ever happened. And those death squads are continuing to kill people. They are continuing their depredations on the population and creating conditions to make life so unlivable that people have to be paying extra money to them. They raise taxes on the population, and a number of the business elite, the oligarchy that has funded them, are now able to be in a position to make money of the misery of the people. For example, let me make it plain.
Yes.
If people want to travel, let's say from Lekai in the south or from Cape Haitian in the north, to go to Port-au-Prince, it's so expensive to travel because you have to pay. If you choose the road, if you go by road, you have to pay so many of the death squads, their tolls.
Wow.
You have to pay them. But to avoid all of this, you have to pay high prices to catch a plane from Cape Haitian to Port-au-Prince. And those planes are generally owned by members of the oligarchy. So there is plenty of money being made from the misery of the people, you see? And all of this has been part of an integrated system to really squeeze the population out of their meager.
And when you say integrated system, because we're last week we spoke about the drone attacks, for example, the killing of Haitian people, innocent Haitian people, under the guise of going after gangs, which are the paramilitary, who themselves are from my understanding of what you have said, are very likely connected to this very same operation. So what is the reasoning there? Help us to understand that.
Yeah, what's going on, and speaking to different people in different communities, you mentioned the drone. The drones made their first appearance just about a year ago, maybe shy of a year ago. And at the time, they were being touted by the government as an answer to the quote unquote, to the gang situation.
Yes.
You see, because the term gang really helps the oligarchy and the governments will say, oh, these are people acting on their own. And it confuses people outside of Haiti to think, well, these are outlaws and poor government is besieged, blah, 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 blah. However, when you look carefully into it, you see that these, as I mentioned earlier, this is part of an integrated whole. So what happened at the time, people wanted an end to this, continue to want an end to what is generally called insecurity in Haiti. And so people were very supportive of the government actions. But as things were developing, they began to realize, wait a minute, none of those well-known leading, the leaders of those death squads or gangs are being affected by any of this. It's only, and we would say foot soldiers, but later on it has emerged that even the foot soldiers are not being impacted on the whole generally. It's mostly people living in those communities or poor people in whose neighborhoods they are attacking and dropping these, and then there is a whole contingent in the press that is touting this as success. But when you speak to community residents, they tell you very quickly, no, this person just came back from a hospital, and I got some video footage of that they sent me. She was actually had just come back from the hospital, showed she had the medicine that she brought from the hospital, and here she was hit by a drone or hit by bullets from the police.
Wow.
There have been a number of statements by members of the public to show that people who they know, their neighbors, people who have had nothing to do with any kind of activity like that, have been murdered by police or by the police, and then claimed to be gang members because it boosts up the numbers, you see, and it makes, we kill gang members and what have you. And having said that, I have to say that there are very honest policemen and women who are not part of this, who are fighting earnestly, but there is far too many in the police and at high levels who are involved in cahoots with those with those gangs.
I watched a U.S. congressional hearing on Haiti. I mean, it's very hypocritical, but you know, we got what we got from it, which was to say the question was raised as to who were the persons on the ground in Haiti carrying out these drone strikes and killing so many innocent Haitian women, children, and innocent people generally. And the answer turned out to be paramilitary corporations. And the new, what's Blackwater's new name? I keep Vector.
I think it's Vectors or something like that. I should know it, but my apologies.
Yes, and Eric Prince, from Vector, something of the sort. So he, so that came up, and the conversation in the U.S. was, is this an American company? Is this company licensed by America? And the answer to that was yes. The U.S. Embassy has come out, I understand, in Haiti and said, oh, yes, we know about this. They are operating on the ground. But this is the same paramilitary corporation that operated in Sudan, in Congo. We're going to talk about Blood Diamonds, in Iraq, and so on, and with the kind of viciousness that you would not expect. So we have these foreign military operatives, mercenaries, if you will, now operating on the ground in Haiti. But to what extent, it seems as if they are embedded in government. So what's a government structure in Haiti? What are we to understand by what government is now?
Yes, what we have has been, since the coup d'etat of 2004, we've had governments that have been empowered, not reflecting the majority will for the most part. They've been imposed by the U.S., France, Canada, along with the core group, and supported by the UN occupation, basically imposed by the UN occupation. And so the tragedy of this, and I'm glad you mentioned Eric Prince. So what my point is, there has been no connection really to the masses of the people to do the people's will or to do things for the welfare of the population. We can see how many people are in the streets of Haiti, 1.4 million, and nothing has been built for them. And So the most outrageous thing about this guy, Eric Prince, Infectious, is that he has said that colonization is a good thing and it's needed. And I'm paraphrasing from what I've read in the press. And his worldview is that having to colonize again. So that's why Haitians are really outraged by the actions of the government. So it's a very lucrative contract that he has for a year. It's about 55 million, I believe, for the first year, maybe off 52 or 55 million
So this
for 1 year.
This is being paid by the Haitian people?
Paid by the Haitian people, by the Haitian government. And the structure of the government right now, we are the transition government. That was a presidential council of 9 members, and then you are the prime minister. But they ran out their term. The term ran out just on February 7th, and now it's a prime minister, and that's another interesting story. But in the interest of time, I won't go into it. But that prime minister, I don't believe he has the power to sign those kinds of contracts according to the Constitution. But he's a darling of the U.S. The contracts have been signed. So one contract is 55 million for 1 year to Eric Prince for security. Wow. Second part of the contract again with Eric Prince is a 10-year contract. And we are talking multi-million-dollar contracts for custom collection. These are things that the government should do and not send it to some foreign entity to do. Private companies.
But that tells us a lot about the government structure. Is that Vector Global, Eric Prince, former Blackwater, is part of government. This looks like the military arm of government, and the mercenaries under him looks like the military arm of government. And CARICOM has signed off on this.
They are supposedly contractors. In other words, they are. But Haitians are saying, look, what's going on here? Because we don't feel that we pay taxes to a government that's supposed to have these institutions. These are government institutions. So collecting customs, that's government should do that. And also, in addition to this, there is also a prison building project, but with a different group of firms, and that's $85.5 million. And again, when you look at it, according to various reports, there is the profits that could be made from that going to the billions of dollars. But all of this will not go to Haiti. They will be mostly going to these foreign companies. But who's footing the bill? The initial
and that's
payment,
a question. Who's footing the bill?
The people of Haiti.
The people of Haiti.
The poor, the impoverished majority in Haiti, because the rich, the oligarchy, do not pay their taxes. And that was one of the reasons for the coup d'etat against President Aristide, because he said, we cannot be always making the poor, the working class, pay taxes, and then for the rich, who have untold millions, not to pay any taxes.
My brother, we're totally out of time. Let me just ask you one final question. What next? What can we do? How can we help through the organizations that you yourself run?
Yes, people can. We have the Haiti, our website, HaitiSolidarity.net. That's for the Haiti Action Committee. And for the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, it's HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. And what we do, we're in touch with communities in Haiti. We try to support our sisters and brothers on the ground when their schools, they build community schools. The government is not helping in any of the schools. I was watching a video this morning. It's disgusting, the schools that are the public schools, how they are neglected. And so people have taken it on their own to do that. Community clinics, various institutions. And then not to forget, there are many young women in the various communities. Gang rape is a major problem. It's a political weapon used by those death squads. And so many young women in several communities have formed organizations, many women, but particularly young people have formed organizations in order to come together, to heal themselves and to also help protect other women in the communities. We support also farming cooperatives to build local agricultural production so that our people can eat wholesome food.
So please go to Haiti Solidarity dot, is it .org?
Net.
.net, sorry.
HaitiSolidarity.net.
.net. And take it from there. Pierre Labossiere is on many times. He's an expert on Haiti in this space, one of our main experts. He knows what's happening on the ground, and he can guide you as to where to go, how to go, and what to do.
And on a hopeful note, we have also the UNIFA, which is the University of Dr. Aristide Foundation, and it has a teaching hospital, and it just graduated, I believe, I may be off on the numbers, about 600 students graduated on March 1st. So it really uplifted people.
That's a good note on which to end. Thank you so much, Pierre Labossiere, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my sister.
Talk to you soon, and good to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Pierre Labossiere there out of Haiti. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with much more inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. We're going to my next very special guest who is standing by. We have been telling you what's happening across the world. We're just over a month, as we said, into the Third World War. They're not naming it, they're not calling it so, but the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov last night our time, said this is World War III. We're in the middle of what I call a bellicose interregnum. We're seeing the rapidly emerging economic pandemic, paucity of fuel, food. We're looking straight in the face of famine of biblical proportions. And this is not to frighten anyone, it is to say what is our responsibility, what is our role, what is our mission, what should we be doing, how should we be talking to each other, what should we be saying to each other, but most importantly, what should we be doing for survival? We're looking at a global socio-economic unrest. We're seeing a collapse of national governments right now. Many governments around the world have either banned travel on a particular day, have closed down entire industries, have just literally shut down. We are seeing the emergence of a second pandemic. We had a health pandemic during COVID. Now we're moving to an energy pandemic during this Third World War. I think we have to pay attention. We have to take our heads out of the sand. This is very serious. The implementation of disaster management protocols will come back. The DRHMA, for example, those are going to come back. We're going to be seeing hybrid control, militarized police, and robots. We saw a robot walking out with Melania Trump, the wife of Donald Trump, and in a meeting on education with the wife of the president of France. And this is predictive programming. It's beyond predictive programming. Basically, they're saying we're ready, we're here, and we're rolling out information subterfuge. We do not know what the truth is anymore. We have to be searching for truth. Truth is inside of us, and this is where we're going to find it. The only place we're going to find truth in this time is within ourselves. That's the bottom line. You can't trust BBC, CNN, Fox, NBC, no C and no B and no D. You can't trust the legacy media, the mainstream media. There's no truth there. The same people who own this media, they are the very same ones who own the military-industrial complex. They're the same ones who are buying, who are making the weapons of war. This is a very, very tight, very closely knitted industry, and it's all connected. Everything is connected. What is happening in Cuba is connected to what is happening in Haiti, is connected to what is happening in Venezuela, is connected to what is happening in Ecuador, is connected to what is happening in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran, in the UAE, in the Horn of Africa, the Strait of Hormuz, or the Red Sea, or the Canal of Suez. Take out your map, look at it all. It is all connected, and it's about to get worse because the Houthis have now joined the war, and they're about to close So the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Now how serious that is. They're about now to close the Gates of Tears. The Arab name is Man El Mandib or something like Dam El Mandib or something. But we know it means a Gate of Tears. And that's what the term I usually use. The Canal of Suez is always closed when there is an issue. The Red Sea is totally locked down when there's an issue in the West like this. So they're going to have to go, to get food and fuel and oil and fertilizer and helium and all of that, it's going to have to go all the way around Africa, around the Cape of Good Hope, and do it in the days that, you remember those days, for those who study history, what they did going all the way around Africa. We'll have these conversations, but what I want to say to you is that we have something to do. We have a responsibility to begin to talk to each other in the churches, in the schools, in the classrooms, in the markets, wherever we are, not about Iran war, but about how we are being impacted by these global upheavals, what it means for our farming, for our food security, for our water security, for our ability to survive. And then we need to protect our water sources. We need to protect our farms. We need to farm. We need to plant so that we have something. Plant long-term and short-term crop, because what is coming up on us now gonna be pretty. It is simple as that. They are calling it a religious war. They are making it into a religious war. They're calling it Armageddon. They are making it into Armageddon. They say they're going to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque to build the third temple. Well, let them do that. They are the ones who are doing all of that. They are bringing into being that which they want to bring into being, and believe me, they are going to use drones and some other AI technology to have somebody coming out of the sky and tell you that it is the second coming of Jesus Christ. Remember me tell you that. They are way beyond our understanding of what so-called human beings can do. Remember, they are not even human beings. They are a whole other spirit walking around in human being body. All right, a semi-little piece. Let me go to my very special guest who is standing by. But I had to get that off my chest. Dr. Pernell Bell, I hope you forgive me for taking some time from you. It was just bubbling to get off my chest. And my father is a preacher. How you do, Dr. Bell?
Good morning, Cabo.
Dr. Pernell Bell is joining us. Well, I was in a session yesterday. We talked about the BEV session. What a beautiful session. Brilliant. I had to come out because my computer started overheating, but I heard everything. I just wasn't there for the question and answer, because if we never turn off a computer, I would be in a serious problem. But what a beautiful session. And one of the things that you did in that session, Black Educators' Voices, was to talk about the work that you are doing and have done in Jamaica, re-education. This is, my husband also listened to it, and we had a good discussion afterwards, about how complex the work is and how it touches on almost every single aspect of life, not just our discipline, if you will. I mean, that's quite phenomenal, though, Dr. Bell. It's every discipline, isn't it?
Every discipline, every single discipline is affected.
Yes.
You're right.
And you have done the work. I'm going to ask you to take a minute or two, just to talk about some of that work. I know you don't have the and I should have asked you to carry, share your screen and have our listeners look at some of what you said yesterday. But talk to us about some of that work that you shared with us yesterday that you have done within the Jamaican community. Or just
okay, so what I did was to look at my role in education. So I started out as a classroom teacher for 10 years and then segued into social work and psychology. And it was then that I took a new lens in terms of understanding what was happening to some of our children. Yes. And so what I did was when I was doing my dissertation, my dissertation was on looking at teachers' attitude towards children with disruptive behavior disorders. And out of it came some very interesting conclusions, and one was that teachers really were not understanding what disruptive behaviors were, and also they were not managing the classroom in the way that they should. And so out of that came my book, A Teacher's Guide to Understanding the Disruptive Behavior Disorder. So not only were teachers going to be teaching, but they were also going to be understanding how to manage children's behavior. I also understood that teachers were overwhelmed and very stressed, and also went in with workshops for educators, for teachers, for the education officers and so on, so that they too could understand what obtains with our children, and that many of these children were presenting with mental disorders. And that is why they were disruptive. Trauma, for example. Some of them were experiencing psychosis, and also ADHD, conduct disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. And those were disorders that needed psychiatric as well as psychological interventions. So teachers alone could not be, it was going to take a collaborative approach to help these children. And so this is why teachers were so overwhelmed. I also went into schools to help in terms of stress management for teachers and how they could care for themselves, as well as be able to teach and teach without being so overwhelmed.
And what do you, if anything, has happened to change some of that? Because I know that the situation is, it is a critical situation. It's probably chronic in the system here now in Jamaica. But from your work and the work that you've done in Jamaica, what has changed? And tell us about some of the remedial solutions that were put in place.
And so, for example, those very training. So I used to go around in schools across Jamaica to teach teachers behavior management strategies, and also to teach what these disorders were and the kind of interventions that would be needed to help these children. And so, for example, the children needed to be referred to child guidance clinics across the island. And in those clinics, we had psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists who would be able to assess, diagnose, and treat these children from a behavioral standpoint, a psychological standpoint, and a psychiatric standpoint. And so that kind of wraparound intervention would be able to help the children, especially those with ADHD and other behavioral problems, to become more emotionally regulated. And that emotional regulation would lead to them becoming more settled in the classroom and be engaged enough to be taught by the teacher, and the teacher not being so overwhelmed, be able to teach. And at the end of that, you would have children not being expelled from the system, but being managed within the system so that they too could reach their full potential.
And as you talk about the teachers, I'm going to go to a break, but I'll leave this question to you. What has been your experience with a situation where an educator with unaddressed childhood trauma, because that's something that I know you look at, is challenged to address a child with behavioral and learning issues that, unbeknownst to them, results from past or ongoing traumatic exposure. I'll just take a quick break and come back. So, Dr. Bell, just before we went into the break, I asked you about the teacher and the impact or when there's a situation where there is undiagnosed trauma for the teacher, him or herself?
So that's a very good question, because 1 in 4, it was said that 1 in 4 persons will experience a mental illness. So if 4 of us are here, count out 1, 2, 3,
Wow.
1 in that lot. After COVID, it went to 1 in 3. persons.
There are exactly four of us here right now. And Peter, you good? I'm just checking. Yes, sorry, go ahead. We're not making fun of mental health, but anyway.
No. 1 in 3 now is the statistics that is shown. So based on that premise, we're going to say that everywhere, including teachers, will be experiencing some kind of mental health challenge. And if someone is experienced or have experienced trauma in particular, that is trauma that is undiagnosed and untreated, it's going to show up in hypervigilance, it's going to show up in irritability, it's going to show up in outbursts, it's going to be showing up in the way we our cognition in terms of our positive or negative talk, and that will also show up on the students in the classroom. And so it could act as a trigger for even a child who is in that classroom and is also traumatized. And so this to a child who may be presenting with some undiagnosed and untreated mental health issue. So that again would be a vicious cycle where re-traumatization would be taking place on a daily basis for the teacher and also for the students.
And this is interesting because we're seeing now, and this is not to say that we're diagnosing anything, but we're watching what's unfolding in Jamaica's schools right now, and I'm not sure if you've got an eye on it. But what's your reading about what's happening in our schools? Murders, vicious fights, students are killing students, and this is it might seem weird, but what's your own take on it, Dr. Bell?
So remember last week we also spoke about trauma and how trauma is presented, and that in of itself, many of these situations that are in schools could be as a result of undiagnosed, again, mental health issues. It could be community as well as communal trauma that is going on and then being presented in the classroom in the form of dysregulation, hypervigilance, looking out for danger, survival instincts coming up because children are feeling that they are under constant attack, and those constant attacks will lead to that hypervigilance. And when we are hypervigilant, we're acting out of a nervous system that is damaged, a nervous system that is reacting sometimes to perceived danger when it's not even there.
And so we get this acting out, which is really violent. To the in situations like that, what are the red flags? What do teachers look for? And are our teachers trained or prepared to identify these red flags, or even where in cases where there are intergenerational trauma?
Sometimes I think what teachers see is defiance. Not that this child may be in difficulties or distress, but defiance, and so and rude. So we are using a layman term now. The children are just rude. We're living in a generation of children who are just out of control, and not recognizing that there may be psychological as well as psychiatric issues that are going on. And some of the things that teachers could look for in children who are traumatized is what I said earlier. An irritable child, a child that is dysregulated, given to outbursts, even when it doesn't seem like that is the natural reaction that they should be given. Children who are easily frightened or startled in a classroom situation, and they are on alert to every single thing. There's going to be a fight. All of those could be signs that this child is traumatized. And when teachers see those behaviors coming up, rather than perceiving them as a difficult child, a defiant child, begin to ask what may be generating this behavior and make the proper referrals. Refer to the guidance counselor out of informed kindness, not out of maliciousness, but out of kindness, to say something is going on here. We need to understand it to be able to help this child.
Does the teacher have to be in a position of optimum mental health or great mental health at the most to be able to deal with this situation? Because it seems to me you just talk about how stressed Jamaica's teachers are, and if that is the case, it is true. Just the other day we had them, so many of our teachers dying on the job and otherwise. So that, the conditions that teachers themselves are facing, how equipped are they mentally to be able to make these decisions on the spot?
So that's a difficult question to answer, in the sense that each individual has their own situation to deal with. And so I think the broader and more general picture would be, let's get the Ministry of Education, for example, coming in what we would call trauma-informed teaching, and teach teachers to identify their own trauma and deal with it, and to help the teachers identify trauma in children and allow them now to be able to cope in a situation that presents itself like that. But if you are in something without the knowledge of it, it's going to become overwhelming because you don't understand. And my experience over the years is that teachers have been dealing with children from a very uninformed point of view, in terms of even children with conduct disorders.
Hold that point for me, Dr. Bell. I'm going to take a quick break and come back to that point. Pernell Bell, consultant, clinical psychologist, author, and mental health professional with extensive experience in psychological assessment, psychotherapy, and organizational consultation. She is a founder of the Caribbean Diagnostic and Physiotherapy Institute, where she provides, psychotherapy, not physiotherapy, Psychotherapy Institute, where she provides clinical services, supervision, and professional training to developing practitioners. Dr. Bell, as we went into the break, you were talking about the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, what they could do, but also talking about diagnoses that are being missed by teachers, but are teachers really qualified to identify those?
No, they're not qualified to diagnose, but they're qualified to see symptoms and know that something is not right here and make the appropriate referrals. So that's the key.
Yes. And what was the point you were making about how the Ministry of Education probably need to change or to ensure that these are covered in schools?
And I don't think it's changed, because I know that the ministry has been doing a lot for their teachers, retreats. They have been doing education, both public education as well as educating their staff in different ways, classroom management, self-care, and so on, because I've taken part in some of those for teachers. Yeah. But what we're saying now is that we want it to become more defined, in that sense that teachers are not reverting to seeing difficulties and then just labeling them from a layman's point of view, but now becoming so aware that these could be mental health challenges. And if you don't know, yes, you're seeing symptoms, to make these appropriate referrals to be able to help these children. Yeah. I remember that yesterday, if you were there in my talk, that we had designed a program sponsored by the Jamaica Money Market Brokers to go into schools, and we selected one school where we did a pilot to to actually help that school to better understand how to treat with children who were presenting with what was called disruptive or difficult behaviors. And one of the things we did was for the teachers to identify those students, make reference to the guidance counselors. The guidance counselors would then make reference to a psychologist. The psychologist would then do an assessment, and out of that came those children who were presenting with difficult behaviors. All of those 12 children who were selected. One, they were presenting with ADHD, intellectual disability, psychosis, and by psychosis we mean that this one child was experiencing hallucinations and delusions and sitting in a classroom but presenting with those behavioral problems. A structured program was developed where assessment was done. We met with the teachers, parents, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, and made an individual therapeutic plan for those children. And what we did also was to train teachers, use a summer session to train teachers in identifying those symptomologies, train them in how to deal with those behaviors in a classroom setting. And also we employed special ed teacher, an occupational therapist, and a social worker to manage that program. At the end of a year, we reassessed, and after reassessing, what came out of it was that children who were experiencing intellectual disability made a 5-point increase in IQ, and that is something that in my training was said to be almost impossible, because once you're born with a certain IQ, that's the IQ you're going to go with. And the young lady who was experiencing the psychosis, the hallucinations and delusions were gone because she was now being treated with medication as well as psychotherapy. She went on to graduate from university. If that intervention may not have been there, what would have happened? That's the question we would have asked. So training all around is important. Teachers and everyone else.
So this training, is it available now? Is it an ongoing thing, or do we need to up the ante?
We need to up the ante. We need to have, that was kind of a blueprint that we were doing for government and the Ministry of Education to see that this is going to be the way forward, where every school should have an educational psychologist, every school should have a social worker, every school should have a special ed teacher and an occupational therapist, and teachers should be trained once the disorders are identified. Teachers should be trained in how to manage it so that they don't become overwhelmed.
What is stopping that? Because obviously that result is in. This is known. What would be the factors impeding that?
I think under-resourced. And I think now the government at one point had a program that they called PASS, which was the Program for Alternative Student Support, which was a program that they would make referrals to psychologists and psychiatrists who would help these students who they would make the referrals to. The same thing is now being done under a different name, which is the Service Integrative Program, where Ministry of Education is referring children to professionals, psychologists, for assessment and for intervention. And that's going on now. I think the under-resourced comes...
Is that similar to the MICO program, where a child is... identified and then sent into that MICO? Is that what you're talking about, that MICO program?
No, MICO program is different, because MICO does assessments. So it's an under-resourced system too, because the number of children that needs to be assessed, MICO cannot adequately assess those students, because assessment takes time. And you're going to be assessed for IQ, you're going to be assessed for socio-emotional functioning, and the presenting problem will tell you what other testing material will be needed. And Michael Care is doing a fantastic job over the years, but still under resourced because we don't have enough psychologists or other practitioners to be able to help. And I think that is what the issue is here, where government is still under resourced. Every school should have a educational psychologist and a social worker, and that's now not being done. But government ministries have made significant progress from 20 years ago when I did my study on what was happening in schools.
And I was just looking for a story just now. I don't know if Peter can find it, where there was an announcement made last week or the week before by the Minister of Education about AI intervention, and that very soon, in short order, I think probably by September, I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. Have you seen it? That students will be given an AI assistant 24/7. I mean, is this the answer?
No, but I haven't read up on anything like that, no, but I don't know what is the AI, what role would AI be playing. We know that AI is now in psychotherapy a lot in terms of the kinds of programs that they have out there that both adults, teachers, and students can use to regulate themselves and to even offer some level of therapy. So I don't know if that's what is being done. I would have to
I'm looking for the story.
At some more.
Yeah, I don't want to give wrong impressions. I'm looking for the story while you talk. So if I'm looking down, that's basically what I'm doing. So pardon me there. But yeah, and I thought of it because of what you said and what's needed in the education sector, the extent to which we are under-resourced. But there is a push in Jamaica, and it has been going on for a while, for tourism intervention, so that for students to be prepared for tourism. From that, obviously there's a lot of money in the tourism sector, and I'm talking private sector money. This is where I think we need a balance, though, in terms of how can we begin to address some of these issues. Is it that they do not know? I mean, I'm talking like the private sector, the tourism industry, that depends so heavily on the education system under functioning.
Well, if I'm understanding you right, I mean,
Yes,
every sector in the society should be concerned about the well-being and wellness of our people, the wellness of our students, the wellness of the wider population. So whatever can be done to create interventions that are going to create a well society, both physical and mental wellness, should be entertained.
I found the story. So it says, this was from the Observer. I'm not sure if other media houses carried it, but the headline, March 18, government to introduce AI systems to support national curriculum. And it says the island's educational landscape is set to undergo a significant technological shift as the government plans to introduce a number of artificial intelligence systems modified to support the national curriculum up to the secondary level. And they're quoting the Education Minister, Dr. Dana Morris Dixon. She says, "We are introducing very shortly the Jamaica Learning Assistant. When this is launched, every child in Jamaica will have a 24/7 AI-powered academic assistant that is tailored to the national curriculum." And she was speaking at the inaugural Caribbean Examination Council Regional Conference in Jamaica. And she announced that the tool facilitated dynamic and creative learning, which she says will positively impact students' academic performances. She added that the platform was trained to be culturally relevant and adaptive to the unique learning style of each student, providing multiple options for how content can be delivered. So she said, and I'm quoting here, "So you learn something in school, you can go home and you can use a learning assistant to give you more. So this assistant works depending on how you learn." And I mean, this is it goes on and on. I mean, this is really interesting information to be putting into. This is AI. I'm not quite sure when it's going to come on stream. Is that there? All right. As for teachers, Maurice Dixon told the conference that the government is also piloting a software tool called Eagle Eye, which handles the marking of examination papers. And I mean, it's a very long story. It doesn't say when it will come on stream. It's probably there, but I'm just sight reading. But you're just from the bit that you heard.
No, the world is going AI. We're living in the age of AI. And I think the government's move or the ministry's move is really to make it more ethically, ethical practice of use of AI. And in the sense, because now AI is being used to generate work for students. And so that in of itself may be unethical. So government may be now trying to regularize and use AI in an ethical way. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
To be fair to the story, it says she stressed, however, that the AI-powered platform is not intended to remove the relevance and impact of teachers and acknowledge that the system requires careful administration.
Right.
I'm concerned about it. I mean, I know a lot about AI. Peter, you know a lot about AI too. And I'm very concerned about this before the mental health issues are dealt with. That's the point I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we should invest first in mental health and secondly in AI.
And I agree. And as I said earlier in my talk about what I know that the ministry has been doing is that they have developed these programs which would right now it's called the integrative service integrative program, where children are, and teachers too for that matter, not just children, but teachers and children are now being sent to practitioners, mental health practitioners, to get the needed help. And they have a certain number of sessions, and then if the practitioner or the clinician makes additional referral, then they will also pay for that too. So I think they're becoming a lot more aware and conscious, and they have service providers in all parishes throughout Jamaica where they are actually doing stuff. So I think this AI is more academic in nature, and I'm understanding where you're saying take care of mental health before academic, but both can coexist.
AI can't be just academic in nature. You know, AI, where we are with the AI technology, it is beyond being just one thing. It is also a complex beast. And so that, well, you talk about careful administration, there has to be a whole lot of conversation about this.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I think.
And I think you should maybe get one of the ministry officials on your program to explain what this is.
Yes, I'm going to. Most definitely going to. It would be good also to hear what the JTA has to say about this and UE and so on. Thank you so much, Dr. Pernell Bell. I'm going to invite you back in short order. You don't know that, go already. Dr. Bell, you are a member of the Running African family. Thank you so much, my sister, and we'll talk to you very soon, as usual. Very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and I am willing to come back time and time again.
That is good to hear, so applause for that.